Okay, hello everybody. It is July 3rd, 2025, and yes, I know I look horrible. I am out doing some errands this morning, and so I didn't shower and shave before I went. But either way, I want to do a quick update on what is going on the war in Ukraine. I know it's kind of fallen out of the news lately, so I thought I would try to catch up a little bit. Russia's summer offensive is in full swing. There are four major fronts to the war, and let me cover each of them in kind of a quick version. The first one would be in Zaporizhzhia in the south. The Russians have launched their offensive there. They actually launched it several days ago. A lot of artillery bombardment, a lot of assaults. They have captured a few small villages. Overall, very minimal gains. Doesn't look like a whole lot is going to happen there. The Russians are definitely spending a lot of resources for very little gain down there. My guess, though, is that this phase of the operation won't last too long. Second front would be in Sumy Oblast. This is the one that's been going for at least a month now, maybe longer. Basically, after the Russians drove the Ukrainians out of Kursk Oblast, Kursk is part of Russia. Kursk Oblast borders Sumy. Sumy is part of Ukraine. The Russians have moved into Sumy. At first, it actually went fairly well for the Russians. They were able to gain some ground, take some villages. The Ukrainians have stiffened their lines and have basically shut down the Russian offensive there. The Ukrainians have counterattacked and have retaken some of the territory they lost, not much. Overall, the Russians did not gain a whole lot, and the Ukrainians have taken a little bit of that back. But right now, kind of like Zaporizhzhia, that line appears to be largely frozen. The Russians have launched some more assaults recently. They have failed. And so we're kind of just, everyone's kind of holding serve there right now. The main area of conflict right now appears to be in the center in Donetsk, and specifically around the Pokrovsk area. The Russians have spent the last 9 months trying to take Pokrovsk. It is the central rail hub that is supplying the Ukrainian lines in that area. The Russians appear to have deprioritized that. They've actually pulled 2 full divisions away from Pokrovsk, which is, for the size of this war, a very substantial troop movement. They are moving in the Trotetsk, I can never pronounce these, direction now, making a little bit of progress, oftentimes measured in fractions of a mile per day, like a quarter of a mile, a fifth of a mile per day. They're literally having to take one field at a time, typically with fairly heavy casualties and with a large expenditure of ammunition. The Russians do appear to have finally taken Chasiv Yar. Again, I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation. They have been trying to take that town for 2 years. They have attacked it and attacked it and attacked it and been beaten back and beaten back and beaten back by the Ukrainians over and over again, and it looks like they've finally gotten it. It appears that the Ukrainians basically gave up on it to try to hold on to Trotetsk instead, or if I'm saying that right. So overall, very minor victory for the Russians and at great cost. If you're wondering how overall is the front moving, the answer is not much. You may notice all the distances and units of measurement we've been talking about here are tiny. It's a half a mile here, a quarter of a mile there. The Russians take 2 villages, the Ukrainians take one of them back. Very little is actually changing hands. Now, don't let that fool you. That doesn't mean there isn't lots of fighting. There's a lot of fighting. It's just not changing very much. For the Ukrainians overall, this is going fairly well. The Russians are making their big summer push. They've been at it, at least in the Sumy region, since early June. They've been at it in Zaporizhzhia for several days, and the Donetsk region, their big push has gotten started also several days ago. And so far, the Russians really aren't getting anywhere. So again, for Ukraine, you're taking what is probably Russia's last major offensive of the war, and you're holding it off. And the reason it is Russia's last major offensive is because they are burning out of equipment and manpower. There's a popular myth Russia has bottomless manpower and they have bottomless equipment. No, they don't. They absolutely have bottoms to that, and they are getting very close to their bottoms, especially on things like armored vehicles and large caliber barrels. But I digress. The fourth front that I want to talk about was the air campaign. This has been the most active and dynamic area of the war. Both Ukraine and Russia have engaged in sustained strategic bombing against each other. They're using drones and missiles as opposed to manned aircraft, generally speaking. The Russian effort has really ramped up the last few months, and they're putting out very large swarms of drones and a fair number of cruise missiles. Their target is mostly civilian infrastructure, namely housing stock. They're going for apartment buildings, they're going for housing developments, things like that. And they are doing a decent amount of damage. They are spending many millions of dollars per week on equipment sending this stuff out. The question that is worth asking here is, how effective is it from a military standpoint? And the answer is, it's almost completely ineffective. Americans should know that, because the most effective strategic bombing campaign in human history to destroy housing stock was done by the Americans. We did it to Japan, mostly in 1945. We also did it to a lesser extent to Germany. We concentrated more on industrial targets in Germany. The British did not. They just hit the housing stock. Both Germany and Japan suffered massive losses of that, and it really didn't have much impact on the war. And so far, the impacts of the Russian attacks on the Ukrainian housing stocks have also had very little impact on the actual military situation. The Ukrainian drone campaign has been much more effective. They're attacking the Russian supply chain at all points. They blew up an ammo dump recently, they've hit multiple chemical plants recently, they've hit production facilities, they've hit rail yards, they've hit bridges, they've hit truck repair facilities. What they're doing is trying to break up Russia's ability to supply its troops. And frankly, it's working. One thing that is happening very consistently with the Russian forces is they are running out of ammo after a few days of fighting. They attack hard for a couple days, and then their artillery just has to stop. They're just out of shells. Now, they do eventually resupply and they get the fight going again, but these interruptions are giving the Ukrainians breathing space, giving them a chance to consolidate their defenses, reorganize their lines, things like that. The other thing is, it is wreaking havoc on the Russian ability to repair and recover vehicles. The Russians are out of trucks. They ran out of trucks fairly early in the war. The Ukrainians blew up thousands of them. And then the Russians resorted to using civilian trucks, just like trucks, like regular pickup trucks and stuff like that, and vans and things like that. Those have pretty much all been blown up. The Russian military is now making heavy use of donkeys. I'm not kidding about that, by the way. That's not a joke. They're really using donkeys to supply their troops, and the Ukrainians have started killing the donkeys now. So the Ukrainian attacks have been much more effective, and they just recently assassinated a general from the Russian Navy. Now, you may be thinking, wait a second, why is there a general in the Navy? Good question. The reason is that the Russian Navy maintains infantry brigades, and they always have. They had these in World War II, they had these in World War I, they have them now. And so they have, sort of like the Marine Corps, they use Army-style ranks as opposed to Navy-style ranks. So a very successful assassination of a high-ranking officer and his staff was also all killed with him. So the Ukrainian air campaign is much more effective. Now, if you're wondering, why aren't the Russians just shooting down these drones? The reason is that the Ukrainians, what they were doing several months ago that was very effective, was they blew up all the Russian radar. The Russians are largely blind when the Ukrainians launch these attacks because their radar just keeps getting blown up. The Ukrainians have also destroyed several of their SAM batteries, so they don't have a lot of air defense. I mean, they've got what are called technicals, which is basically, think of a Toyota pickup truck with a heavy machine gun mounted on the back. And if you can see the drone, you can shoot at it. The Ukrainians right now are in need of more air defense because the Russians are sending so many drones, and they frankly they need everything. They need THAAD, they need Patriot, they need anything they can get their hands on. Which brings me to the final bit, sustainability. Who's in what position to sustain the war? The answer is both armies are in bad shape right now. They've taken a lot of losses. Their supply lines have been hit. The Russian supply lines have been hit a lot worse. There are manpower shortages, there are equipment shortages, there are supply shortages, ammunition, food, fuel, you name it. How much longer is this war going to last? I think probably toward late this year, early next year, because Russia is going to simply be out. I know this video is getting really long, so I'll try to make this really quick. BTRZs, those are the plants where Russia redoes their tanks and armored vehicles. They're running out. They had a huge stockpile of old Soviet tanks and armored vehicles that they have been burning through in this war. They are now down to probably their final third of that stockpile. Probably 30 to 40% of it's left. But a lot of what's left is unsalvageable. For instance, there's a lot of T-62 and T-64 tank hulls in the BTRZs. A lot of those hulls, though, are unsalvageable because they've already had the engine removed or the transmission removed or the barrel taken off the gun to fix another tank, and none of those parts are in production anymore. They have already been cannibalized for parts, and there are no more parts to fix them. So Russia basically, by the way, if you want to know how bad it is, the Russians are making extensive use of motorcycles, ATVs, scooters, and in one case even golf carts as assault vehicles. Not military golf carts, not military scooters. I'm talking like the scooters you see people skating around downtown with, because they just need anything to try to get a guy across the battlefield before a sniper can kill him. And you should see some of the videos of the Ukrainian drone operators watching these guys go, and they're like, they're insane. What are they doing? And they're blowing them up left and right. And you almost hear the Ukrainian guys getting angry at they're just killing these guys so quickly, and they're mad about. It's hard to explain. They're mad about how easy it is to kill the Russians. It's just these soldiers are just being wasted, and they know it. Russia's manpower situation, by the way, Ukraine manpower situation sucks. It's terrible. Russia's manpower situation is quite bad. They started the war with 8 million men that they could use theoretically to fight this war. 1 million of them have been burned out, and another 1 million have fled the country, and they have a chronic labor shortage, so they really can't use the other 6 million. So either way, I know this has gone way longer than I thought. I'm going to go and stop it now, but that is where we're at in the war right now. Bye-bye.